Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, December 27th. This is Africa 54.
The world mourns Desmond Tutu, the South African Nobel Peace Prize laureate who died at 90. We'll have a live report on his legacy. In Somaliland, rescuing cheetahs endangered by the exotic pet trade. And the COVID-19 Omicron variant disrupts the Christmas holiday as surging cases stretch the world's healthcare resources.
South Africa is mourning the death of anti-apartheid hero Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The funeral date for global activist icon was announced in Cape Town on Monday, but due to COVID-19 restrictions, only 100 people can attend. Francesca Lena reports.
COVID restrictions mean that only 100 people can attend the funeral of South African anti-apartheid hero Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The funeral plans were announced by the Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, who will lead the service at the city's St. George's Cathedral on New Year's Day.
At 10 a.m. on Saturday, New Year's Day, the funeral will take place here, and it is here where his ashes will also be interred.
A longtime friend of Nelson Mandela, Tutu won the Nobel Prize in 1984 in recognition of his non-violent opposition to white minority rule. He led numerous campaigns and marches against apartheid from the steps of St. George's, which became known as the People's Cathedral and a symbol of democracy. On Friday, Archbishop Tutu will lie in state at the cathedral.
He was frail, 90, and we know that 60 years ago he was diagnosed with some lung condition, and God has been really gracious to the Arch, carried him through his life. And as you heard from the Dean, he is an amazing human being, always full of gratitude, and for him, Thanksgiving was at the core of everything that he did.
In his honour, the bells of St. George's Cathedral will toll for 10 minutes each day at noon until Friday.
That was Francesca Lena of Reuters reporting. In a statement published by the White House, U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden said Tutu's courage and moral clarity helped inspire our commitment to change American policy toward the repressive apartheid regime in South Africa. It is just a part of what the Bidens had to say about Tutu. Quote, "On this morning after Christmas, we're heartbroken to learn of the passing of a true servant of God and of the people, Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa. We were blessed to spend time with him on several occasions over the past many years. Just a few months ago, we joined the world in celebrating his 90th birthday and reflecting on the power of his message of justice, equality, truth, and reconciliation as we confront racism and extremism in our time today." Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed says he has suspended the Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble for suspected corruption in the latest power struggle, distracting the government from an Islamist insurgency, prompting the United States to call for calm. According to the Assistant Information Minister, Abdurrahman Yusuf Omar Adala, the move amounted to an indirect coup by President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed. Prime Minister Roble was not immediately available for comment. Government spokesman Mohammed Ibrahim Moalim says the president's action was unconstitutional and that Roble will continue with his duties. The U.S. Embassy has urged de-escalation from both sides in the Horn of Africa country. A fire caused widespread damage on Sunday to a local mall in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. According to the Federal Capital Territory Emergency Management Agency, no deaths or injuries were recorded. Firefighters were seen at the scene dousing water on flames as smoke could be seen billowing from the mall. Deputy Police Commissioner Ben Ingwe says they were able to rescue some of the people, but the cause of the fire was still under investigation.
We were caught, and that's why we have been here. And since we come, we have been able to rescue all these ones. You have seen them. We have in conjunction with some of the staff that were around. We don't know the cause of the fire, but they're saying that I think it's the electrical spark. So, and that is the situation. From here now, we have served from here. So it's here that they are battling to make sure. And we have made law, we kept Fordham's bar so that they will not come into loot.
An eyewitness told reporters that firefighters arrived 2 hours after the fire started. A group of citizens were accused of looting electronics and groceries before being detained by security officers. Also in Nigeria, a fire broke out in the early hours of Friday in the country's commercial capital, Lagos, after a fuel pipeline exploded. According to local media, there were no reports of casualties, but a power line collapsed with high-tension cables spreading across a major road. Local sources say authorities diverted road traffic from the area. Pipeline fires in Nigeria, Africa's biggest crude oil producer, are common and are mostly caused by theft and sabotage. The methods used to steal oil often result in accidents that cause fires. Global warming and the exotic pet trade are threatening Africa's cheetah population, but an international NGO is partnering with the government of the breakaway Somaliland region to try and rescue them. David Doyle has more.
2 starving cheetah cubs are being injected with nutrients in a remote corner of Somaliland. At just 5 months old, they are dehydrated, stunted, and so lacking in the calcium they should be getting from their mother's milk, they have problems walking. But they are still alive and capable of making a run for it. Namibia-based NGO, the Cheetah Conservation Fund, and the government of Somaliland, which broke away from Somalia in 1991, have been rescuing trafficked cheetah cubs for the past 4 years. The 2 new arrivals are now in the care of CCF vet Dr. Anahi Gabriela Hidalgo Cordero.
As you can see, their sizes are really small for the age that they have. They should be like kind of this size.
Only around 6,700 cheetahs are left in the wild, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, with most of them in Africa. And the population continues to fall. Kidnapped cubs are often destined for the exotic pet trade in the Middle East. But CCF founder Dr. Laurie Marker says few understand the suffering that entails.
For every one cheetah that might make it into the pet trade, we see a loss of about 4 or 5 cubs en route. And we've actually had firsthand experience on that, watching them die. And if they do make it over into the pet trade, that one, it probably won't live to more than 1 or 2 years of age.
Climate change plays a role. Droughts exacerbated by global warming are causing fewer grazing areas for wild prey and farm animals. Farmers who once could shrug it off when a cheetah attacked their livestock are now less able to shoulder the losses and will track down the mother to make money out of the cubs. But though Somaliland lies in one of the regions most affected by climate change, it is largely cut off from funding, says Environment Minister Shukri Ismail Haji.
It is true that we're an unrecognised government. The international funding levels we can get is very little as a result. We can only get a small amount of development aid bought by agencies and the UN.
But she says the government has a responsibility to protect wild animals and has set aside land for a national park where the cheetahs can roam freely.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, the latest COVID-19 variant Omicron leads to thousands of global flight cancellations. But first, Haiti Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next edition of Straight Talk Africa, we'll explore the multiple waves of the global African diaspora. Diasporan communities are found in nearly every part of the world. But how has their connection to the continent changed over generations? We'll also profile young diasporans making their mark in American politics. Be sure to join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Surging worldwide coronavirus cases are threatening healthcare systems in countries seeing a significant spread. The newest variant, Omicron, led to thousands of flight cancellations ahead of the Christmas holiday. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced plans to send 1,000 service members to support U.S. hospital staff and plans to stockpile masks and gowns. VOA's Arasha Basadi has the details.
More than 700 inbound, outbound, and domestic commercial flights in the United States are canceled. Sunday's news comes after airlines say they grounded thousands of flights leading up to Christmas, with reports of pilots and staff falling ill amid the surging Omicron variant of the coronavirus. But at some airports, like the one in Newark, New Jersey, it's business as usual.
I came here for a funeral, and because of the importance of the person it was, that's why I decided to travel. But I do know the risk that I'm taking, flying and whatnot. But, sometimes it's not about you. It's about certain things that are more important to you in life. So that's why I decided to travel, essentially. But I am aware of the risk that I'm taking by traveling during this time of year.
Health experts warn that anyone in an airport will likely come in contact with the Omicron variant. But recent reports from South Africa and England point to promising data showing surging Omicron infections as being less likely to lead to hospitalization or severe illness. Sunday on ABC's This Week, President Biden's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said that does not signal the all clear.
When you have such a high volume of new infections, it might override a real diminution in severity. So that if you have many, many, many more people with a less level of severity, that might kind of neutralize the positive effect.
Fauci praised the president's multifaceted plan to have military personnel in support roles at U.S. hospitals to help deal with surging cases, along with ramped-up testing and stockpiling personal protective equipment. Still, he says, vaccination remains the single best way to prevent disease.
We're particularly worried about those who are in that unvaccinated class, that, tens and tens of millions of Americans who are eligible for vaccination who've not been vaccinated. Those are the most vulnerable ones when you have a virus that is extraordinarily effective in getting to people and infecting them the way Omicron is.
Despite the looming threat of Omicron and all the canceled flights, the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport was packed with holiday travelers last Friday, Christmas Eve.
Great, except for waiting for your bags a little longer than usual. But other than that, the flight was great, on time, so pretty good.
It was a little stressful, but we made it. We're here.
We had the first flight out this morning, so we thought we'd be okay. Worked out well.
Omicron now accounts for nearly 3/4 of all U.S. cases. According to news reports, the average number of new infections is about 165,000 per day. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
we'll take you back to the story of Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu preached against the tyranny of the white minority and was revered by black and white South Africans alike as the nation's moral conscience. Tutu won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 in recognition of his non-violent opposition to white minority rule. And a decade later, he witnessed the end of that regime and chaired a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to unearth the atrocities committed under it. For more on the life and legacy of Desmond Tutu, I'm joined by journalist Darren Taylor, who knew Tutu well and spent time with him during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Darren, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
You spent a lot of time with Tutu. Share with us some of your fondest memories of him.
Well, I met him as a young journalist. I was in my 20s in 1996 when the Truth Commission began in South Africa. And I guess what I'd remember most about the man was his sense of humor and unbelievable ability to bring together people from such diverse backgrounds, whether it was political, whatever. I've witnessed him with racists on one side of the aisle and complete liberals on the other, and he was that sort of person that just got them talking. And I met him on various levels, obviously in his official capacity as the head of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but then also I got to know him personally. In fact, I don't know if many people would know, but he liked a rum and coke now and again, and there were quite a few nights when he would invite me up to his room and we'd share rum and coke and discuss various things that did not revolve around the Truth Commission. But basically, I just remember an amazing human being who, in the 1980s, when the African National Congress leaders were mostly in prison, he held the country together. He held the struggle together. I think he prevented a lot of excesses as well, a lot of human rights abuses that otherwise would have happened, because he was always a moral voice. But at the same time, I never knew the man to preach. Mm-hmm. He always led by his behavior and by his example. And I just remember his unbelievable humanity.
Darren, there's always something known about a public figure because we read about it, but there are other things that we don't know about their public life. You are personal friends. What is that one thing that you would like to share with our viewers that you knew about Tutu that the rest of us don't have a clue?
I think it would basically be the fact that I think he was a bit of a renegade. I know that people call him the rebel priest, but I know also that he was very upset. He was very disappointed by the way South Africa went after the Truth Commission. Not necessarily disappointed in South Africa's people. I think he was deeply disappointed in the African National Congress leadership, in that he saw the corruption and many things that he thought wouldn't be possible in the new South Africa actually happened. The corruption, the political, the selling out of the people, the poverty that has just continued in South Africa, and the inequality. So no, that's not necessarily a good thing to remember about Desmond Tutu. Mm-hmm. But I would definitely say that his sense of justice and fairness. I know that the ANC ended up, they weren't his friends because he spoke truth to power, and he always maintained that he wasn't a political being. He was a moral being. He was someone who cared about people and not necessarily about politicians and political figures. I'll also remember him on a personal level calling me a troublemaker, and I don't think I ever heard him address me by my name, Darren. He would always refer to me as a troublemaker because he remembered one day I came to a Truth Commission hearing dressed in a bandana, and I had my long hair and jeans, etc. And it was at a right-wing hearing, and those people weren't very accommodating or not very accepting of liberals and people such as myself. and they insulted me and spat at me and swore at me, and he just laughed, and from then on he called me a troublemaker. So I guess I'd remember him for that humanity.
Well, he's been called the oasis of peace in South Africa, also the moral compass. Do you think he realized how powerful his words were and how influential they were to the world very quickly?
Yes, he did, but at the same time, there was always a reluctance about him. I remember him in various situations where he really could have milked things and gotten a lot of things personally, which he didn't. So yes, I do think that he knew he was powerful, and I think that mostly he used it for good, and he tried to be fair all the time, and but he knew at the same time that he could use that power for good, and that's what he strove to do.
Thank you.
And he would always tell me that he's made mistakes before, but he always tried his best.
Thank you, Darren. We're running out of time. Darren, thank you so much for your insight on Desmond Tutu. It is appreciated. Our thanks to journalist Darren Taylor, reporting live via Skype from Johannesburg. Now, for over 4 decades, novelist Don Hurley has been writing 60-second long stories about New Yorkers he met on the street. But apart from amusing passers-by with his literary talent, Hurley also happens to be an award-winning science writer. Anna Nilsson met with Hurley on the streets of New York, and Anna Rice narrates her story.
Are you ready for your story?
Dan Hurley has been writing for 40 years. In the 1980s, he came up with a genre which he called 60-second novels, 1-minute stories of people he met on the streets, first in Chicago and later in New York.
So many people just rush by, they're in a rush, their head is lost in their thoughts. I think it's kind of Zen. It's, be here now. Let's do this. Let's play.
Hurley thought the 60-second novel would be a short-lived experiment, but a little fun grew into a calling.
In April of 1983, I took my typewriter onto the street on Michigan Avenue. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, this is a big mistake. I was starting to feel very embarrassed and nervous. So I sit down, I put the little sign, 60-second novel. Sir, would you like a story? Miss, would you like a story? And everybody's ignoring me. And then a older woman came over and said, what are you doing? I will have a story. And I just talked to her for a minute. And I wrote just a few sentences. I pull it out of the typewriter and there's like 20 people around me. And I read it to her. Everybody claps.
Hurley earned about $50 that day. And that's when it dawned on him that his innocent idea for a fun afternoon could be a lot more than just that. A New York native, he flew to the Big Apple for a weekend. And that first weekend in the city brought him about $500. The decision to leave his job and move to New York City was easy, and Hurley never looked back.
Sometimes I think I'm crazy. I mean, I've done it now for 38 years. I wear a yellow sport coat and a yellow bow tie and a yellow hat. They're like, he must be some kind of performer. Wow, what is this?
His craft may seem easy to an onlooker. Hurley talks to a person for a minute, trying to learn the most important things about him or her, and then he starts typing, fast. He doesn't write for an audience, just for this particular person. He says no one else does anything like it.
Some people are lonely. I definitely get people who I feel like I'm the first person they've had a real conversation with in years. Folks tell me about divorce, mental illness. I'm like totally open to them. I'm not judging them. People can tell me the weirdest things. I'm not judging them. I am there to write their story.
After 4 years of writing on the streets, Hurley became famous, and with fame came business offers and opportunities. He was invited to large parties and events. He started to get paid a lot. He bought a house. But instead of feeling happy, Hurley says he felt he was turning into a puppet. He missed talking to passers-by. He missed meeting new people.
When I did it on the street, it's my world. I've invented it. I think people just like this idea that there's someone there listening and waiting.
Because Hurley believes every person is a story worth telling. For Anna Nelson in New York, Anna Rice, VOA News.
The glaciers in the Himalayas provide water to nearly 25% of the world's population, but the glaciers are melting at an alarming rate. VOA's Zubair Dar has more in this report, narrated by Bijan Hamdard.
6 glaciers in the Himalayas have nearly vanished since 1980, according to satellite data mapping. And researchers say hundreds of glaciers in the region are melting, all part of the impact of a warming planet.
Every year you go to a glacier, we are seeing on an average almost a meter of thickness decrease in the glaciers. So that gives you an idea about the state and the stats of the glacier melting in Jammu Kashmir.
In the Himalayan region, over 14,000 small and large alpine glaciers have been identified, including those in India and Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. Some of the region's biggest glaciers can be found in areas between northeastern India and Afghanistan.
We are seeing glaciers melt very fast, and the way they melt is such that we can't estimate how long they will last. We can't guess how much water will flow into our rivers in the next 5 to 20 years, so if this continues, I can see conflicts and disputes in the future between Pakistan and India over water shortages.
Shifts in ice and glacier reserves have already had an impact on agriculture. Farmers in Indian-administered Kashmir are turning paddy fields into apple orchards.
There is a problem of water in the land. The crop is not growing properly. Pollution has increased. There was snow on the mountains. It was slowly melting. The annual paddy crop suffered a loss of 50%.
Local agriculture sustains the bulk of India's and Pakistan's populations, and the two nations have a long history of disagreements over water management. Those disagreements, experts say, will intensify as the glaciers disappear.
If the two countries don't stop fighting, not only will the disputes increase as we can already foresee, but also our two nations' water sustainability will also be impacted. I think we've reached a very interesting point here that not only do the two countries need to stop fighting for ethical and human rights reasons, but also because of environmental reasons.
And South Asia is particularly vulnerable to climate change. Over the next 30 years, if nothing is done, researchers predict water shortages, drought, and rising sea levels could create some 60 million climate refugees in South Asia. For Zubair Dar in Srinagar, Kashmir, Bijan Hamdard, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.